So my name is Seh Guan. I'm solution architect for SUSE. I'm based out of Singapore. So I'm covering the whole of Southeast Asia. So today we are talking about, this is the title for today, right? Safeguard your API infrastructure with Kubernetes and Zero Trust Container Security. Quite a long topic that I'm covering today. So this topic is here because my marketing guys, they wanted, put in all the keyword, API, Kubernetes, container security. So these are the keywords that we'll be talking about today. So we are here for API days. So we are talking about API, right? Let me get something straight first. When it comes to API, SUSE, we don't have the solution whereby you can manage your API. But rather than providing you with the solution, we are providing you with the infrastructure whereby you can make your API strategy very successful. So the key things that we are talking about today is Kubernetes and Zero Trust Container Security. So these are some of our solutions which is able to help you, make your API strategy a success. So typically when we talk about API is the key mechanism for microservices to talk to one another. So typically microservices, they got to be deployed on top of containers. So when you talk about containers and microservices, you need to have a proper way to manage containers. That's very, very important. Typically, when you want to manage containers, you will be making use of the most popular platform, Kubernetes. And after you manage the containers well, you need to ensure that the containers, your environment is secure. So this is where container security is going to come into play. So the agenda for today, for session, a quick SUSE overview, won't take more than 2 minutes. I'll talk about SUSE Rancher solution, and then I'll go into the demo before we conclude with a Kahoot quiz so that you can win yourself a big chameleon over here. So anyone looking forward to the quiz to win the chameleon? Okay, SUSE overview. Just a couple of company snapshot. We have been around. We are the first company to bring enterprise Linux to the world, basically. Yeah. So before the more famous competitor of ours. So we have been around for more than 30 years. So these are our, our partnerships, some of our facts. I'm not going through all this. And we are trusted by 15,000 plus organizations worldwide. So you can see most of the companies that you heard of are inside the list, right? Okay, so the key thing that I'm going to talk about here, probably a little bit more on this slide, we are putting our solution in the form of a stack. At the bottom, you have your hybrid cloud infrastructure. So we are not selling any hardware. We don't have play in this layer, but just to put everything into perspective. So typically, we play on a higher layer. We play on the Linux layer. So we are the first company, as I mentioned, to bring enterprise Linux to the world. So on top of the Linux layer, you have the Kubernetes layer. So this is where I'm going to spend my time talking about it today. So SUSE Rancher solution. This is the Rancher ecosystem. Typically, these are our products, and we like to categorize it into multiple different categories. So platform, distro, and add-on. So I'll talk a bit about distro first. Typically, when you want to deploy Kubernetes, you might think of Kubernetes is open source, right? So you can just deploy it, the vanilla Kubernetes, and run, the Kubernetes. Why do you need to have a vendor-backed kind of solution? So yes and no, you can do that, but deploying and managing the lifecycle aspect of a vanilla Kubernetes is always a challenge. So I heard many customers talking about Kubernetes every 6 months to 9 months, they release a new version. Every time when I upgrade it, I'm facing some problem. So what the distro does is it's going to make things easier for you. Firstly, deployment. And secondly, managing your lifecycle, things like upgrading of Kubernetes version. And when we talk about deployment, the vanilla Kubernetes itself is, to a certain extent, not adequate enough. It is not production ready. In fact, when you deploy it, the vanilla Kubernetes itself, you might not be able to run your workload properly on top of it because it does not come with many key components. Kubernetes has outsourced many of the components. Okay, it's called out of tree rather than outsourced. So they are no longer putting all their components in tree. So when they release a new version, there are many components, critical components, they are not part of the release. So things like the container network interface, things like the ingress controller, all these are not within the vanilla Kubernetes itself. So if you want to deploy Kubernetes, you need to deploy all these add-ons separately. Whereas a distro is going to make things easier for you by putting everything together into a form of package, so that it's much more easier for you to consume. So RKE is typically meant for the data center Whereas K3S, we have two versions, right? RKE meant for data center, and K3S is more of a lightweight Kubernetes that's meant for the edge, whereby resources is limited, network connectivity is limited. So it's a single binary. All you need to do is to put into a USB if you want to, go to the device, plug it in, and then you're able to deploy K3S on top the any edge devices that you want to. So both K3S and RKE, the key thing to take note is they are CNCF certified. So CNCF certified means that it is fully conformant with the upstream Kubernetes. Okay, so this is Kubernetes distro. So I'm going to move on to the platform. Earlier on, I mentioned that containers, is the key for microservices. At the same time, Kubernetes is key for containers. So as containers get more and more popular, likewise, Kubernetes also get more and more popular. And initially, there's container explorer, which is why there's Kubernetes to manage containers. But now, things has evolved to such a state whereby you need to manage multiple Kubernetes clusters. It has become a Kubernetes cluster sprawl. So you need to have a better way to manage your Kubernetes cluster. So your cluster can be on-prem, it can be on the Hyperscaler, it can be on the edge devices. So you need to have a single pane of glass to manage all your cluster. So this is where Rancher Prime, we call it the world's most popular Kubernetes management platform. Okay, so this is where it is there to manage all your clusters. So at the same time, we have something called Fleet. So this is more for continuous delivery platform. It's built together inside Rancher Prime. So at no additional cost. But so this is typically if you have your developer, you are putting your codes on GitHub. You want to deploy your codes automatically every time you change something. You can make use of it to link up with Rancher Prime and then make use of the mechanism at the back to deploy any applications onto any clusters that's being managed from Rancher Prime automatically. So add on. NeuVector. So NeuVector is a full lifecycle container security. I'll talk more about NeuVector later on. Longhorn is more for if you want to consume stateful application, you need to have a persistent block storage within your cluster. So Longhorn is able to do that for you. Harvester is a hyper-converged infrastructure built on top of Kubernetes. So typically, if you want to manage not just containers from Rancher, you want to manage virtual machine the same way as you manage your containers, you can make use of Harvester to do that as well. Okay, so again, the focus today would be on just two items, Rancher Prime and NeuVector. Okay, so the Rancher high-level architecture, just want to reiterate, right? You can make use of a single server, Rancher Prime server, to manage multiple clusters. So this is the key aspect of Rancher Prime. And then quite a busy slide, right? Rancher layering. So again, we like to put things in the form of a layer. At the bottom layer, when you deploy Kubernetes, you need to deploy your nodes. So your nodes need to have an OS running on top of it, typically Linux. So at the bottom layer, you can run any Linux distribution that you want to. So you can see from here, it can be Slash, it can be RHEL, Ubuntu. So when you deploy your Kubernetes on top of all the OS within the nodes, right? As long as the Kubernetes that you deploy on top of is CNCF certified, it can be making use of our distribution, RKE or K3S, or you can be deploying on the cloud, right? Like EKS, AKS, GKE. So all these fully Kubernetes, CNCF certified Kubernetes cluster, Rancher Prime is able to manage them from a single pane of glass. So again, Kubernetes is very good when it comes to managing containers, orchestrating containers, orchestration tool for containers. But it is not a full-fledged infrastructure solution. So for Rancher Prime, as you can see from here, it can do so much more as compared to a typical Kubernetes management. So things like centralized authentication, centralized policy enforcement, simplified cluster operation, platform services, everything has been built into Rancher Prime. So in fact, there are many key applications that you might want to consume after you deploy a Kubernetes cluster, right? Things like monitoring, things like logging, and even the service mesh. So these are critical for a Kubernetes, for a production-ready Kubernetes cluster. So all these components, you can consume them off the box with Rancher Prime. So again, no additional cost. Okay, I'm going to quickly touch on NeuVector. Okay, So when we talk about container security, I think especially in this part of the world whereby the take-up rate of containers Kubernetes still lagging behind some of the other regions in the world, right? So when it comes to container security, that's even more of an afterthought as compared to containers and Kubernetes, which is already lagging behind. So the key thing about container security is you need to get it right from the onset. Otherwise, you might encounter many issues after you deploy your workload, deploy your applications, and then you found that there are laps there and you want to patch it. This is way more difficult than getting it right from the onset. So over here, SUSE Rancher, we acquired NeuVector slightly more than a year ago with this thing in mind, right? We want to ensure customer get everything right from the onset, from a security point of view. So why we acquire NeuVector? Typically, when we talk about container security, a lot of vendors out there, they are talking more about supply chain security, vulnerability scanning, compliance scanning, runtime scanning based on CVE, based on all the compliance regulation out there, like things like NIST. So this one might seem to be quite effective, but it is not totally so. Which is why for NeuVector, we have something called runtime security. So the data slides, I'm going to showcase more of the differences. Okay, supply chain security. Typically, from developing the code to CI/CD pipeline, to putting the code into a private public registry, to the runtime, we can do scanning on every single aspect, every single process. We are able to do scanning on any of the process, right? So as you can see from here, scanning can be done to the registry, to the container, to the nodes, and to the platform itself. So later on in the demo, I'm going to showcase that to you. So this is supply chain security. So contextual runtime, let me go back a couple of slides. Contextual runtime falls in runtime security, right? So I've completed supply chain security. So the key thing about contextual runtime, let me code this, it provides real-time inline visibility of packet flows, application protocol process, and file system access in both the east-west and north-south traffic. So when we talk about containers and microservices, there is a key aspect whereby you need to manage not just the traffic inflow into your cluster. You need to manage how microservices talk to each other, the traffic between microservices. So this is what we call the east-west traffic. So this is critical because traditional security tools, firewalls, they are not able to be able to visualize or to manage the security aspect between traffic in the east-west traffic. So this is where I think the key selling point of NeuVector comes in, right? It's able to do both north-south and east-west, provide the security aspect of both the east-west and the north-south traffic. Sorry, I just lost my thought for a moment. So typically, when you see the whole process, when a hacker, they wanted to do something malicious to your cluster, they start a new process, access a file, or anything, NeuVector is able to identify any anomalous behavior based on your contextual runtime rule that has been set. So basically, you let NeuVector learn all the processes that's happening within your cluster, and then set the baseline based on that. And when there's any drift, NeuVector is able to see that something is happening out of the norm. Right? So after it happens, it will terminate the attempt before it can hit the target. So in this way, it is better than doing things like just scanning and patching CVEs, because when it comes to CVE, there are many lapses. So for example, zero-day attack don't have CVE. So if you encounter zero-day attack without a proper security solution, then this is where you might encounter issue. Secondly, there are many CVE out there that after a couple of years, even 3 to 4 years, there is no fix for that particular CVE. So this is another problem that you might need to grapple with, whereby NeuVector is able to help you solve it. So it's able to find and deploy a patch without the risk of breach. So this is contextual runtime. Besides contextual runtime, when it comes to runtime security, there are another two main categories. So threat-based control and zero trust. Threat-based control, typically these are the typical one that you might be seeing: CVEs, DLP, network attack in layer 3 and layer 7, OWASP top 10. So this is the guideline that has been given by OWASP. Emission control. So all these are the more common kind of aspect that you might see from a typical container security tool. So what we offer is something called Zero Trust, whereby NeuVector is able to do automated learning on the cluster itself, understand the network behavior, both from layer 3 and layer 7, because it is able to look into the header of layer 7. So it's able to really understand what is the traffic flow like. It's able to monitor process behavior, file access behavior, and last but not least, it's able to make use of security as a code. You can put all the security aspect of a cluster or of a pod of any Kubernetes into a form of a YAML file, take the YAML file and put into a cluster, and or rather take the file and put into another cluster and deploy another cluster, so that you can easily have what you have in a cluster to be done in another cluster. Okay, so just another slide to showcase how the automated behavior-based Zero Trust look like. So again, it is using network as the single source of truth. So there are three different ways that you can, different mode that you can set your cluster into: discover, monitor, and protect. So discover is the learning phase, whereby it is going to the cluster and check out all the different processes, file process, network process, everything, to see what is the normal behavior that the cluster should be behaving. So both the east-west traffic and the north-west traffic is able to do that. So after discover, you can put into monitor. And when you put into monitor, any behavior that is out of the norm, you will receive an alert for it. And finally, if you want to, you can put into protect into your production environment, so that any abnormal behavior, it will be denied. So again, the demo is going to showcase all of this. And this is based on our deep packet inspection pattern. So you can do layer 3, layer 4 pod analysis, layer 7 protocol analysis, as well as process analysis. Okay, so just a slide to summarize what I've mentioned so far. So these are some of the key aspects that NeuVector is able to achieve. So typically, container security and running on top of Kubernetes, there are many aspects of it that you need to take care of. So NeuVector is able to take care of the whole process from development to production. So things like compliance reporting, CI/CD, DevSecOps, layer 7 application micro-segmentation. So this is typically for to ensure that every single container it is being segmented rather than based on the old way of segmentation, threat protection, and zero trust protection. Okay, so with this, just some advertisement. We are going to have another session tomorrow. So Wee Xiao, who is our Senior Director and CTO of APJ and Greater China, is going to address everybody on laying the groundwork for agile and secure enterprise APIs. Okay, so please attend the session as well. Okay, demo time. I'm going to switch my screen. So I'm duplicating my screen now so that I can show you the demo environment. So everything should be quite easy to see. Okay, that's good. Okay, first I will showcase Rancher Prime first, and then I'll show you how Rancher Prime and NeuVector can work together. Okay, so when you first log into Rancher Prime, you will come to this screen and you are able to see all the clusters that you are currently managing. So again, Rancher Prime, single pane of glass, you can manage multiple clusters. So a lot of the clusters, I did not turn it on due to resources. So you can see that the two key clusters that we are working on today is these two. Are you able to see my mouse? Yeah, and the local cluster, that's the one where my Rancher Prime is residing on top of. Okay, so let me show you some of the global items over here. So I click on this global button. You can see that there are things like cluster management, whereby you can go to the clusters and then manage the cluster aspect of it. So this is something that's residing below the layer of Kubernetes. So for example, you can click on this AWS RK2 cluster 1. You can check out things like the machine pools, the underlying nodes information, the provisioning log. So what happened when you provision your cluster, and some of the related resources. So everything can be seen easily. And What else do I want to show you? Okay, I'm not going to show you some of the items over here. And things like user and authentication. You can see that Rancher, you can set your own user, your roles, and your groups, and it is fully integrated into all the major authentication provider out there. Okay. So one thing that I want to do right now is I want to address the fact that it is very easy to upgrade Kubernetes version using Rancher. So what I'm going to do now is for this cluster over here, I'm going to click on this 3 button. I'm going to click on edit config. And then from here, I'm able to do a whole lot of things, right? Things like adding nodes. For example, if you want to, everything is automated. Oh, the network is getting a little bit slow. Yeah, so I'm going to upgrade the Kubernetes version over here. I just need to upgrade to the latest one and just click to save. So within a few minutes, the cluster will be upgraded to the latest Kubernetes version. Okay, the other thing that I want to show you is I want to create a new cluster and see how easy everything can be done from the Rancher server. So I have already linked up AWS account, my AWS account, to this Rancher Prime server. So what I'm going to do now is I can provision hyperscaler version of Kubernetes. So it can be Amazon EKS, Azure EKS. I can also provision my SUSE Rancher version of Kubernetes, RKE2, K3S, or RKE1 on the Hyperscaler. So Hyperscaler, typically when you deploy Kubernetes, right, you need to provision a node. You deploy Kubernetes on top of it. So if you run the Hyperscaler version, everything will be done by Amazon or Microsoft. Everything will be done automatically. But you can make use of Rancher to do that. At the same time, if you want to deploy your own nodes and then deploy another version of Kubernetes on top of it, so if you want to deploy RKE2 or K3S on top of EC2, you are able to automate the whole process as well, making use of Rancher. So what I'm going to show you right now is I can just quickly launch a new cluster. Just call it cluster 2 or something. And I need to key in the right region. Give it a subnet. And select, I just want to select an older version. And then I'm going to create. So again, within less than 10 minutes, a new cluster will be provisioned automatically. So it's as simple as that. Okay, so another thing that I want to show you is so far we are now looking at just the management of the infrastructure beneath Kubernetes. So what if you want to go into check out all the objects from the Kubernetes context? So you can do that by just going to any cluster that you want to. So for example, you go into this cluster, RKE2, NeuVector, and then you are able to see all the objects on the left side. Right? So whatever that you want to see, you are able to see from here. There are cluster tools that is out of the box, as I mentioned. We provide out of the box support for some of the important components, such as monitoring tools based on Prometheus and Grafana, Istio Service Mesh, as well as logging based on Fluentd. So all this you can consume immediately, directly after you deploy your cluster out of the box. OPA Gatekeeper as well for policies. So, okay. So now I'm going to jump a little bit, right, to talk about NeuVector. So I have already deployed NeuVector in this cluster. So after deploying NeuVector, I have attached a service discovery, a service, an ingress controller, an ingress service to NeuVector. So what I need to do is to go to ingress over here, and then I can access the NeuVector web GUI. So I click on this. I can go into NeuVector. So it takes a while. Okay, let me log into NeuVector. Okay. So after logging into NeuVector, you can see this nice dashboard over here to show you what is the current status of your cluster from a security aspect, right? Things like, what are the risks that's available to the cluster, vulnerability, ingress, egress exposure, everything can be seen from the dashboard. So some of the other things that you are able to see is from an asset point of view, you are able to see whatever that's residing on the cluster and beneath the cluster. from a platform perspective, you can check out the platform and see whether is there any vulnerability happening on your platform. So for this case, there's no vulnerability at all. You can check out the nodes as well. So you can see the underlying nodes provisioning the Kubernetes cluster. So you can see that this node is running on top of Ubuntu. It shows that our Rancher cluster, our RKE2 cluster can work on any operating system, any Linux operating system, and not just on SUSE Linux. So you can see some of the resources specs, and you can see how many vulnerabilities are there in the underlying nodes. So you can check on compliance, what are the items that pass the compliance, what are the items that doesn't pass the compliance. You can check out the vulnerabilities. So vulnerability is based on the database version 3.043. You can see over here as well. And then you can check out what are the containers. And at a glance, you can see which containers require patching and how many patchings are needed. Otherwise, you can go to the container view. And from the container view, you are able to see every single container that is within the cluster itself. Again, you can check out compliance. You can check out vulnerability. Okay, before I do that, I need to just click on a particular container. So you can check out, what are the vulnerabilities with respect to that particular container, what are the compliance issues on the particular container, and even the process, as I mentioned, we are able to detect the process as well. And what are the process that's currently allowed in the container. Again, it can also scan registry, so this is very critical as well. I have added 2 registries inside there. So if you go to one of the registries, so for example, this one, you are able to see all the containers that is, okay, let me put this up a little bit more. All the container images in the registry. So if you just click on any one of the container image, you are able to see from a layer point of view, which layer has vulnerability or compliance issue. Right, so you can see that this layer requires 6 fixes, this layer doesn't require any fixes, and things like this. Yep. So everything can be done from a single console. You are able to see every single security aspect of your cluster. And system components as well. So these are just the containers that are being deployed on the cluster. So these are NeuVector deployed containers that is supposed to be meant for NeuVector consumption. So there's a controller, there's a scanner, and there's an enforcer. Okay, so I'm going to jump to policy. So a key thing to take note of is group. Every time when you add a new, you deploy a new pod or a new object, it will be grouped automatically over here. So this is where, from the group, you are able to deploy your policies, any policies that you want to. And for example, if I have deployed a WordPress application, so you go to this WordPress application, you click on this, and you can check, what is currently happening underlying the hood for this pod, right? So you can check out all the processes that is currently available in this container. The file access rule, what files can be, what files are supposed to be read or write, but it's not. There's no files that's written or read over here, so it's empty. Network rules as well as some of the, you can set a response rule, so I'm going to show that later on, as well as DLP and WOF. So quite a fair bit of stuff that you can configure from this group, right? So yep, we are going to see more of that. So things like network rules is aggregating every single network rule that's within the cluster. Similarly, likewise for response rule, DLP response rule as well. DLP sensors are those that is currently pre-configured, and you can make use of this DLP sensor or the WOF sensor to check against any object or any pods within the cluster. Okay, so after that, you can click on this and check out all the security risks that's currently that you might be facing. So you can click on vulnerability, and you can see from the cluster itself what are, from a CVE aspect, what are the CVEs that's the most malicious within your cluster. Right? You can do filtering, you can run your report. So simple way, it's very simple for you to run report. Right? You can do filtering, or it's up to you. You can just click on this to see from asset view. After you click on this, the report will be generated, everything clean and easy. So after you click on it, see, everything is done up nicely. This is from the point of an asset. So it's based on the pod, the application. Or you can click on this. This is another view based on vulnerability. Oops, taking a bit long. Probably I have too many pods running in the cluster. Let me do that again. Oh, it's taking longer than expected. So probably can revisit this later. And vulnerability profile, you can click on this, and you can see from, oh sorry, not from the compliance profile. You can click on this, and you can see, from a compliance point of view, based on the regulation, right? It can be GDPR, it can be HIPAA. So what are the rules that it must be fulfilling? It must be able to fulfill based on the CIS ID. So you can do filter based on this as well. So you can see there are a few categories. So category can be Docker. That's on the container engine itself and the container instances. Or it can be Kubernetes, which is any vulnerability or compliance issue that's residing on the Kubernetes layer. Or it can be on the image. So yeah, no image shown here, but it's okay. So I can click on compliance. And again, at one glance, right, you are able to see all the compliance issues that's currently within your cluster itself. And each of these compliance issues, you are able to see how you are able to solve the issue. Okay. So notification, the key aspect, okay, you can see every single security lapse within the NeuVector console. But what are the key things that you need to take note of? So this is where notification, this tab, this is where the key aspect, you can find it from here. So security events, so any security events that happen within the cluster that require immediate attention will be shown here. So risk report, anytime there's a new CVE vulnerability or there's a compliance issue, it will be reflected here, the risk report. And then events is any changes that you have made to the cluster will be shown here. So you can go to setting, and then from here you can do things like making use of webhooks, so that every time there's whenever there's an event, you will be alert of the event through whichever medium that you want to, or you can make use of syslog to hook up to all the events. Okay, so now I'm going to apply some policy. I'm going to groups, right? So this is where the key thing is the policy groups. This is where you're going to apply your policies. Okay, so as I said, I have deployed a WordPress application. So this is where I'm going to do most of my work on. Okay, I'm going to open up another NeuVector console, so that's easy for you to see all the events that's currently happening. Okay, so here I'm going to security risk, I'm going to notification, I'm going to security event. So right now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to check out all the process profile, right? So you see from here, these are all the process that's currently allowed within the cluster itself. So you can see that all the behavior is currently learned, and the cluster is put into develop discover mode. So I can go to any of the groups and then set any policy to it. So currently everything, every single object, every single class is under discover mode. So what I want to do is I can switch the mode. So I can click on this switch mode for this particular object, the WordPress object, which is the deployment. I click on this switch mode, and then I can change it to discover mode. Submit it. So any changes, okay, let me explain this a bit more. So initially it's 0 drift. So whatever changes that you made won't be taken into account. Whereas if I put into basic, right, changes will be taken into account, and then it'll be shown here as one of the one of the process that's being allowed in the cluster. Okay, so I submit it again. Right now, if I go to Rancher Prime, okay, I'm going to pull out the kubectl shell. And from here, I am going to run a command, right? A cur command. So I'm going to cut and paste this cur command. Okay, what is going to happen is it's going to cur the SUSE website, just a cur command. So it's going to pull down, so it's going to pull down some information, and then the cur command has been completed. So after it is completed, you can come back to the NeuVector console. You want to refresh. Okay, so probably it's going to take a while. Oops. Okay, then I just run this command one more time. You will see a cur command appearing here, which becomes a process that's being allowed in the cluster. Oh, it's not coming out. Let me see the mode again. That should be coming out. Probably I need to refresh the whole browser. Apologize for the network connectivity. It's taking much slower than usual. Sorry about that. Wow. So probably that's why it wasn't reflected. That could be due to the network connectivity. All right, so let me just refresh this again. Or probably I launch, okay, I come to the other one. Go to policy, groups. So it always happens during live demo, right? So when I'm doing everything at home, everything seems to be so smooth. But during live demo, then this kind of things happen. So, yep, I go to WordPress again, check out the process. Refresh it. Okay, let me run the again. So I run the cur command again. I go back to the NeuVector application and do a refresh. Oh, it's not showing up. It's kind of weird. Okay, let me try something else. I don't think it's into this. Somehow something is not working fine because when I do a refresh, okay, it's not on container. It's weird. Sorry about that. I think, yeah, I don't really know why it wasn't showing up. I might need to do some troubleshooting. I'm sorry about that. So I think we have run probably out of time. So do we want to proceed with the Kahoot first, Dennis? Yeah.
Any questions before we go to the fun part? For test. Okay, thanks for listening to the demo and the presentation. Any questions? If not, we will go to the fun part. Maybe you can.
Yeah, so
Okay, we will play Kahoot quiz. There are 5 questions. Very easy if you manage to listen to the presentation and demo. And there will be 3 prizes. And the prizes is this, you can see at the front here. So prepare your phone. You need to scan. We only allow 20 participants. So first 20 will get to play the game. So please stand by your phone.
what is the URL? Is it this one? So I start it?
Yeah.
Is it on the other side? No. Okay, let me pull it over.
Okay. Blocking. Okay,
So
get
click on
ready.
this.
Okay, that's the game pin. Or you can scan full screen. Seh Guan.
So we need more participants. I think we can
7, 8,
allow up to 20. So fastest hand win. So we have 20 already?
Oh, yeah.
We can allow more than 20?
How many is it?
That's
20?
interesting. That's good.
Okay, it's supposed to be 20, but now we have 21.
So the more the merrier. Please join
Okay.
us. Yeah.
All right, that's it. Let's start. The right side.
Okay, so where's my cursor?
Top left. Okay, so first question. What is SUSE NeuVector? This is very easy.
So it was written in one of the slides. If you pay attention, then you will know the answer. Okay, it's a 100% open source, zero trust container security platform. Wow.
Great. I think most
Great.
people
Pay
got it
attention,
right.
That's good.
So most people pay attention. All right, next please. Seh Guan, thank you.
Where is
Very small at the top there. Okay, next question. Oh, these are winners.
take a look at the scoreboard.
YS. Okay, what are SUSE NeuVector unique capabilities? Should be quite straightforward. Yes, all of them.
So this is a trick question.
Let's see who's the winners. Oh, so YS, Satyaras, and Ashraf. Yeah. Okay, third question. What does SUSE NeuVector monitor as the source of truth? Is it the OS, network policies, or the Kubernetes? And the answer is Kubernetes.
No, the answer is the network.
Sorry, the network.
most people get it
Most
wrong.
people got it wrong.
So probably let
Sorry,
me-
I was looking at the green.
let me elaborate this a little bit more. So
Okay.
I think the unique selling point of NeuVector is we make use of the network to monitor all the traffic. So it's the single source of truth. So I hope after this, right, the next time we see this Kahoot quiz, you won't get this wrong again.
All right, let's see who's the top winners.
Oh,
FZ.
YS is
We are
no
very
longer the top
fast.
one, but still top 3.
Okay, which type of Kubernetes clusters can Rancher Prime manage? Ten more seconds. Okay, most people got it right. Any CNCF certified Kubernetes clusters.
That's great.
Okay, FZ, YS, and demo, top 3. Last questions. Which OS must a Kubernetes cluster managed by Rancher Prime be running on top of? Is it on only Red Hat, SUSE Linux, or Ubuntu, or all of them, or a few more? Okay, let's see. Yes.
Wow, okay.
All of them and a few more.
Yeah, so most of them get it correct. So
Yes,
now
so
it's for
let's
the
see who's the
final
winners.
result. Can we win yourself a big chameleon?
Sumif, Nick,
And who is the winner?
and YS.
Wow.
Who's YS? Please come to the front, 3 of you. Let's take a group photo.
The boss is over there. Zero trust. So I apologize for the demo that is not supposed to be, it's supposed to be working and not supposed to be like this. So if you want to find out more about NeuVector, you can reach out to me. Our booth is just out there. So reach out to me and we can arrange for a demo separately. Again, I'm sorry about all the bloopers. Yeah.